Hello, hello, hello. So I wanted to address a few things. I've been coming across the internet and I've been seeing various things. So there's this individual called Frank Zanu. He's from Benin. He's a quote unquote scholar, and he's been saying a lot of nonsense. And I really don't think he's credible with a lot of the stuff that he's been saying. And I want to say much respect to Philip Scott and various people who've been criticizing him and people who have addressed what he's been saying. Um, he is from Benin. He does not speak for all Africans. I myself am Nigerian and Jamaican, born in America. I'm from the Igbo ethnic group, and I want to make this very clear. So, start off by, I believe in global unity. I do understand I'm a black male and I'm conscious of things, and I'm a hard worker. I believe in doing the right thing. So, there's nothing that anybody can say about me as far as my goals, my ambitions, and the things that I aspire to do. Um, as far as global unity, I don't care what race you are. I know there's been institutions of racism. Black people have been oppressed. A lot of times, black people were dealing with racism from not only white people, but Hispanics, Asians, Chinese, Indians, Arabs, you name it, North Africans, whoever. But then we can always unite too. Sometimes black people are against each other. But that's another story for another day. I'm not going to get into all the theatrics of all that. I'm willing to work with anybody. I'm a hardworking person. I'm a good person. I'm a good guy. I have integrity. I have good skills. But you see, when you have somebody like Frank Zano who tells lies, because that's literally what he's doing. I really don't like what he's been saying, and I don't think he represents African people on the entire continent of Africa. So let me break it down and address a couple of things. Even with black people, there's some black people I'll say, you know what, I don't. There's some black people I don't even trust. So let me start there. I'm not like always fully black power. I'd be like, oh, I trust every black person, or I trust every black American, or I trust every Caribbean black, or I trust every black African, because some I totally disagree with anyway. But let me make this very clear. A lot of black people have potential to get along with each other, from Africa to the Caribbean to African Americans, even to black African Americans, even though a lot, engage in behavior that is not productive or not good. But somebody like a Frank Zanu is clearly an agent of black division. He is a destructive person. He's a liar and he's a manipulator. He's clearly an agent of destruction. He talks about African Americans, black Americans having no culture. Yet he himself comes from Benin, and which is a country which, much like a lot of African countries, suffers from tribalism and corruption. Much like how you have Nigeria and Ethiopia and Rwanda and DRC Congo and all over Africa. Although Africa is a beautiful continent, you have tribalism and corruption. And he's not even addressing the problems in the Benin. If America and black Americans have no culture here in America, and I've seen the pros and cons of everything. I've seen the things that some of the African Americans will do where they say, they're foundational black Americans, and then, they want to dismiss Africans, and then, which I totally disagree with. I don't like that. Or some Africans having a way of talking bad on black Americans. But when you look at Frank Zanu, his hypocrisy is just totally reprehensible. You want to say black Americans have no culture and all this and that. You say, I think to the extent that, if correct me if I'm wrong, that the majority, American population should be a certain way to prevent crime or prevent white. And listen, I'm not racist towards white people. I don't care what race you are, but then many of them are racist. But you see, he's saying all these stupid things, in my opinion, which I think a lot of people are saying. Okay, so he's saying that African Americans have culture. So why is he in the U.S. then? Why is he in the United States benefiting from the United States? The civil rights movement was the reason why a lot of Africans came here to the United States. Now, are there a lot of many Africans work very hard. Don't get me wrong, they work very hard. I'm one of them. I've seen the pros and cons to everything. America sometimes will trick you. You work for the dream and then you get tricked. Sometimes, African Americans can be very hostile. They'll call African students names. They'll try to be bullies in school. I've known some to be bad people, just like you have some amongst the Africans. But you see, it doesn't help when you have somebody like Frank Zano, who I think is going backwards. And then, he doesn't want to admit the reality of things. And then he's talking about progressive culture, how African nations fail, but he's not addressing the reality of the situation. He's clearly a liar and he's a manipulator. So let's get into a little bit of the history. So look at Frank Zanu very carefully. Look at him very carefully, and I want all of you to analyze and look at him very carefully and look at how he's behaving. Does that look like somebody that's credible with what he's saying? He could be a scholar or whatever, but does that look like somebody who is really, who really you should be listening to? Considering how hateful and evil that he is, based on what I see. I'm not just making things up. This is based on what I see. He's clearly an agent of destruction and division. He has said things like, almost to say that whites are superior than Africa. He's just he's an accidental person to be in Africa. He's an accidental person. All humans have come from Africa. I'm not saying that to say that Africans are better than anybody, but what is his point? I don't get this guy's point. And, I really don't like this guy, and this is not like I'm angry or whatever. I'm trying to do something, or I'm not trying to do nothing. I'm just focused on myself, focused on my own. But I really think this guy is a really ignorant person, saying, and I don't think he should be given platforms to be spreading lies like that. So again, I'm staying in my place. It's not like I'm trying to, I'm focused on myself. I have no negative intentions or nothing like that. I don't care. He's entitled to his opinion, but this guy is I just think he's a trash. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'm a very progressive thinker. I'm a very progressive thinker. And, I think that, of course I can't save the world and I can't dictate what somebody thinks. If that's how Frank Zanu thinks, that's fine. That he's entitled to how he thinks. But speak with facts. Look at Benin, look at Nigeria, look at Togo, Benin, Sierra Leone, Liberia, DRC Congo. Look at the history and how these countries oftentimes were engaging in self-destructive behavior. Not all of them. You had the slave trade, where many of the African tribes were selling other African tribes from those regions, just like how you had the Arabs enslaved black Africans on the other side. But Arabs also enslaved Nigerians and Ghanaians. But see, it's not always just about slavery. Can we just get things done? And I really like how Philip Scott addressed Frank Zanu. Like, we can move all the things on the side as far as identity and slavery and all that. Let's get back to work, earning money, earning income, getting things done. But because of all these divisions, all these, terminology and all these stupidity is getting people lost and not focused on what they're supposed to do. I'm really irritated by this guy, Frank Zanu. He doesn't have to like me and I don't have to like him. And I'm focused on myself. I'm not trying to listen. I'm just saying, with all due respect, I think that he's a very ignorant person. And he doesn't speak for all Africans. All Africans don't look the same. All Africans don't think the same. We have our value systems. Then he says African Americans have no culture. Yet Africans, remember now, African Americans were stripped of their identity, were not allowed to read and write by whites for 500 years, had to relearn everything. Then when they were learning the industry and learning how to make things and building things, there were labor unions that were preventing them from getting things done. Then they had Black Wall Street, which was destroyed, and then they tried to have the civil rights movement. How dare you say that? Now, are there African Americans that are ignorant and stupid? Of course. I don't even like those ignorant, stupid African Americans. I like the ones that, have a good purpose. But you can't put everybody in the same category. What about some of the African dictators that could engage in tribalism and corruption? Why don't you address that? Frank Zanu. You're talking bad on African Americans and you're saying all these things, but he's not even telling the truth about the Africans. But see, Africans have a lot of potential. We have civilization, but it's people like Frank Zanu, and I want to make this very clear, is the reason why Africa is held back. Yeah, it's people like him. He is an agent of destruction for black race. It's the truth. It's the truth. I'm not like a hateful person. I don't care what race you are. I love everybody. I love everybody in the world. But I know I'm a black man. I know what we're up against. But Frank Zanu is the typical type of black African that is hateful of not only other black Africans, but African Americans. He's a typical example He is an agent of destruction. And this is exactly, listen, I'm a peaceful guy. I don't want people to take this the wrong way and put things in their head. I don't want people to put matters in their own hands. I want people to be peaceful and make critical thinking decisions. But think about these things that you're seeing on the internet and make critical thinking decisions. This guy is a clown. This guy is a clown. He's a liar. Look at the history of Africa. He's doubting African existence. He talks bad on African American culture. Then he talks bad on African. Then he talks bad on African culture. He talks about Caribbean blacks have no culture. You have the Taínos and Caribs. You have the Spanish and Portuguese, French and English. Then you have the black Africans. Remember now, the charter that Chris Columbus started to force black Africans to come over to the Caribbean. How dare he say that? He's saying that African Americans have no culture, like they don't exist. Then he said Africans are, put themselves in a position, to be colonized. Remember now, Europeans have better weapons. What are you trying to, So I just want to summarize. I mean, I have a lot more to say. I think that the world can do better. We need to be progressive. We need to earn our income. We need to have peace. Of course, everybody's not going to agree on everything. I mean, do I have a personal vendetta? No. You know what I'm saying? We don't have to always agree on everything. We have to learn to work with each other. But this guy, I think this guy, man, you know, just like how you have a lot of the stuff that you see on the internet where, listen, I don't care what race or creed or gender or whatever, I know I'm not saying everybody has to get along all the time, but there needs to be progressive ways to solve things and problems. Leave people alone and stop spreading lies that don't exist. Stop spreading lies. This is just ridiculous to me. And I had to say something about this. Have a good day.